As we are half through to the series, I want to make a short repetition of what we have learned so far. We have learned that the humans are made out of two pieces. The one piece is the dust that became the body, and the other piece is the breath of life that became the spirit. And we have seen that the spirit is leading the body. And the way the body reacts is a mirror of how the spirit thinks and leads. And in our last lecture, I wanted to show that what really makes us sick or what brings us into trouble is outward events that we are not able to cope with. A divorce after 46 years, a death occurrence of a loved ones, or any other stress point, an unrighteousness done to us by another one, or some unrighteousness done to those which are out of our family, and we find ourselves in a situation where our spirit is in bondage. We see ourselves not free to think nice about those around us. Our spirit has thoughts of revenge. He is not happy, he's hurt, and then he tries to fix that, but he cannot, and so he destroys himself. And it is the body. So I would like to show that in a more nicer presentation that I did on PowerPoint. So we start with the point that we know that the human being starts in function from the cortex, from the brain. So from the cortex, all nerves go down into the limbic system or through it, and then they switch sides, and so the whole human body is conducted by that what we see, the cortex of our brain. That's the beginning of everything that happens in our body. So the next thing is, how is that managed? And we have seen it is done by electrical current. It's an impulse that is there starting from the cortex and then going into the body through the nerves, how they come. And then the response in the limbic system is chemistry. That's where our emotions are made and our feelings come from. And of course, from there, you get a feedback back to the cortex immediately. So when the electrical current comes in the limbic system and there is a chemical reaction, immediately the cortex gets back a feedback. Like we saw that when we have bad thoughts or we get into a fight, we make a certain electricity that changes the chemistry in our limbic system, and then it goes back and makes us the headache. So that's an overview. And now the question is, who controls the brain? And we saw that the brain, the cortex, is controlled by the spirit. And this is very important. He controls it through electrical impulses. And electrical impulses are made by our decisions. You see, every decision that we do makes an impulse to our cortex, and then it goes into our body. So in life, the most important things then are decisions. Because before we can do something, we must decide to do it. Before we can be hurt, we must decide to be hurt. Before we have revengeful thoughts, we must decide for them or not. And this is why decisions are the thing that governs the human beings. Now, those decisions are done in the soul. And we had that discussion, and I hope we are understanding this. The soul is this connection between the cortex and the spirit. Every action that is done in us is done actually in the soul, because there the spirit and the body interacts with each other. How this interaction goes, I have put in another presentation in our scheme, so that we see in the living soul we have the cortex and we have the spirit, and now from the body comes the eye. But the eye is connected to the cortex. But who perceives what you see? Can the cortex see, or is it the spirit who sees? So I hope you get it. The action of seeing is only possible by the spirit. He is the one that sees, but can he see when he doesn't get any information from his eyes? Through the whole nerves that goes from the eye to his... He cannot. So the next thing is, we have an ear, but who hears? I hope that you get it. The spirit is he who hears. We have a body that transmits all the time the feelings to the spirit. Who feels? The spirit feels pain or tiredness or whatever. Then we have a nose. Who smells? It's the spirit who smells. We have a tongue. Who is tasting? It's the spirit who tastes, because he needs to decide if he eats it or not, if he smells on it or not. So this is a small scheme to understand the combination of the functioning between the body and the mind or the spirit. So I think we see that none of them can function if there is the other present. Yes? You need a body to see, but the body doesn't see, the spirit sees. And then the spirit needs to act on what he sees. He must take a decision. Do you see things in the day that you want not to see? Yeah, so then what do? You look away. Do you hear things you don't want to hear? Do you smell things you don't want to smell? Yes? So then you have to do something about it. So, you see, we hear, and then we have to choose, and we have to decide. So, you do not decide what you smell, because the smelling comes from outside. But in the moment you smell it, you have a decision. Yeah? And I am very often tempted with the smelling. Yeah? I'm not so good in things that don't smell good. And I took bad decisions by smelling something bad. Yeah? I couldn't do anything about the smelling, but I could do about my decision what to do with the smell, what to do with the information that comes through the spirit. So let us make this clear. The information comes and knocks on, but without a decision, there is nothing done. Yes? So, now, what's the next? The decision is the electrical impulse in this. Now, if we have a body, how many decisions do we have in life? How many decisions do we have?
35,000.
Now, you might have even more than thousands of decisions, but how many decisions or how many choices you have? You have only two. And why do you have only two? Because you see, the cortex or the brain, we have seen, has a plus and a minus. They are charged with electricity, and the atom has only two how do I call this? Two poles, yes? And if there are two poles only, then the spirit can make the electricity only by two decisions. Okay? Because the body has only two things. So how does that do? That has to do it. The decision is yes and no. So there are only two decisions that we have when we smell something, when we hear something, when we see something. Yes, it's just yes and no. There is no more that we have. And it's so good to know that in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, yes, yes, and no, no. Anything else is from the evil. So let's make that plain. Electricity is done by the yes or by the no? No. It's done by the yes. Then you do an action. If the spirit says no, what do you do? Nothing. But you see, you can say yes also. If you want to avoid the loss, then you say yes. So it's a very fast combination of all two decisions. You're not aware how fast you take a decision between yes and no. Okay? Now, the next thing is important. We have only two decisions that make the electricity. The question is, how many criteria do we have for our decision if we have only a yes and a no? How many criteria do we have for decision? Because before you take a decision, you must put that into a criteria. For what do you say yes, and for what do you say no? Yeah? So there must be a criteria where you take a decision before you take it. So you have to judge it, you have to analyze that according to a criteria. So if you have two decisions, how many criteria do you have? Only two as well. Why one? So, well, it's good. So we have two criteria. And I discovered these two criteria in 2007. At the end of 2007, I discovered that we have only two criteria that we decide to. And I will continue here. And in 2007, I got that, to say so, enlightenment or that understanding. I was on my way to find out why people get sick. And so my thought was that for the diseases that we have in the body, we have different causes. And so I thought that the people that has a hearing loss or a tinnitus That is a noise in the ear. Or when you are dizzy, I put them in groups, wanting to know what's the common denominator. But I thought that when you have a noise in the ear or you're dizzy, that's two different causes. Or when you have an ear infection, that's another cause. And so I was going through the histories of these people to understand what makes them sick. And I started in 2004 with my practice. About 2005, I started to talk to patients. But at the end of 2007, the big discovery was that every group that I had, which were having issues that I could not put on the physical level as a cause. Yeah? They were not hit, they had no accident, they were not poisoned, they didn't eat something that I should evidently see that's from food. So I took their story and I found out that each story of every group, each individual, ended in the same thought. So there was one thought that came up in every group. So if you come to me to tell me your story, I know where it starts. You know? Because there are only two criteria. And there is a positive and a negative criteria, as the body has a positive and a negative. And you have, for the positive, you have a yes, and for the negative, you have a no. And now I discovered this thought, and this thought just changed everything in my thinking about the function of humanity. Because it showed that no matter what you experience in life, it ends in one thought, or it starts in one thought. It's resumed to one thought that has a positive and a negative side. And so, looking now to the human structure, I was aware that I have the big body, and I have here the cortex with the nerves, and I have here above the spirit, and that the spirit might make the electricity, he can only do it with one thought that leads to one decision, yes or no. So there is something there that is one thing through which all the energy is done, or all the things are done to the body, and so then it goes. But the door of entrance is one door, and I painted this for both things, but it is for both the same, so we can reduce it to one. Yes? And this is the heart. It's the place where the spirit takes the decision to give the command to the body to do something or to do nothing. So, it's one thought, it's one criteria, and this criteria is, the negative one is loss. So every decision that a human being does, and now we can go through the nice pictures, they are nicer than my painting. So we have just the gain or the loss. There are only two criteria for all decisions that we do. Yes? And now I have to know, how does that work? So when something comes to me as from outside, I smell something. Yes? I must put that smell either in gain or in loss. And if I put it in gain, I say, oh, this smells good. And if I put it in loss, I say, bad. And then you have a not so good reaction. Yeah? So the decision goes very fast. So, but everything, when your husband is betraying you after 46 years of marriage, or he goes with a younger one, where do you put that event? Loss. Now we have to see there is another component. Whose loss is it? That is very fantastic to say in a non-involved situation. But in a moment you are involved, whose loss is it? You think it's yours. And then how you react. You want to avoid it. And then your poor body gets not good electricity and he's damaged. So, just understand, everything that comes to us, before we take a decision, it must be put into a yes or a no. I mean, it has to be put in gain and in loss so that we can say yes and we can say no. Now, this is why it's so important that we understand the evaluation where you put the thing is most important. And we will see, it's not that when your husband goes astray or someone does a wrong thing, that's not good. But if it's not your loss, you will be staying kindly to that person. There will be no force to make him to change. But if it's your loss, you will have no peace. You will be in total bondage in that situation. So it's so important that we know the right evaluation, whose loss is it, and if it is a loss or a gain, is decisive for us how we then decide. Because the decision is at the end of the process in our spirit, not at the beginning. And you have seen, we started to find out the end of the function in the body. Those are the muscles, they need to act. And now we go to the brain where the information comes down for the muscles that they should act. And now we need to see, where does the spirit start? Where is this process starting that leads to the decision? And now we go backwards. We know decisions are yes and no. There is nothing in between. There is nothing in between. See, some people say, well, that's black and white thinking. But there is not more. Our body has just a plus and a minus. He cannot understand something else. Electricity cannot be done by any other procedure except by a yes or a no. So, before I say a yes and a no, we want to see the process of decision. We have to put it in a gain and a loss. But before we put it into gain and a loss, we must evaluate it. And there is also two criteria for that evaluation. Is it a loss or a gain? And for whom is it a loss and a gain? So, then we go, when the evaluation is that we say that's a gain, we say yes. When the evaluation comes and we say it's a loss, then we say no. Now we must understand that in this structure, the most important thing is that we can never change to put the yes to the loss and the no to the gain. There is no possibility. The only thing to mix them up is to evaluate something as a loss, what is a gain, or a gain that is a loss. And then you say no to the gain, and you say yes to the loss. But you think it's the opposite. Yeah? We can never say yes to loss and never say gain to, or say no to gain. So, we have here the gain and the yes, you see they are united, and we have the loss and they are united. Now, what comes before the evaluation? Now, because the Spirit must evaluate the event, and we saw that he must evaluate into gain or into loss. Now, what must he have before he evaluates it into gain or into loss? There must be a step before it. We go through, pardon?
Identify the problem or the event and develop a criteria for whether it falls under a gain or a loss.
Yeah, so there must be a process of, for the evaluation, you need a tool to evaluate. How do you know where to put the gain or the loss? You know, you have to have a measurement. So before you decide, before you put the event that comes on you into evaluation, you filter it through a measurement. Because how do you know what's a gain and a loss? Yes? So it must go through a measurement, to a filter, and that filter is a measure. Because how do you know? Let's look at it very simply. We have Adam and Eve. And we know Adam and Eve were made. They were the first humans. And they were given how many decisions? 2. And they had a yes and a no. They were made to go for the yes, that is the gain, and no to the loss. And now God gave them exactly what's a gain and what is a loss. Did he? He said, Adam, it is a gain if you eat from all trees except from one, the good and evil tree. This is a gain when you do not eat. You see why? So, do not eat. And what is a loss? When you eat from the tree forbidden tree. So, very clear. Any questions? Was Adam and Eve in a danger when God gave them the command?
No.
Yes. Did God put them into a danger that they might eat from the tree? Was it a risk that he put them on? Why not?
Because he gave them a choice to eat from all of the other trees except for that one.
So they could satisfy their appetite and their hunger from all the trees. Now, was it a temptation for them to eat from that tree? If you know you have in your garden one tree that is poisonous, would you ever be tempted to eat from it if you're not hungry, if you have enough to eat? Would you ever? You see, there is never a danger when you go for a walk in nature and you see a poisonous, not snake, but a poisonous fruit, berry, whatever. Would you say, oh, I'm so tempted to eat this? Would that be a temptation for you? Of course not, because you would know it is a loss or a gain? Loss. A loss, and you can never do yourself loss. So Adam and Eve were in no danger when God told them, do not eat, because he said, that's a loss. And they cannot do themselves loss. They can look to the tree, but they would never eat because they know it is a loss. They cannot eat. They cannot eat. What is the only thing why they can eat? When someone comes and tests to them, and this is the snake, the snake comes and says what? Eve, it's a gain to eat. And it's a loss not to eat. Now, you see, the snake doesn't come and says, Eve, come eat to die. Would it have worked? No. What did he come with? What was the gain? Knowledge. How many women do you know that they don't want to be smart? Yes? Is there a need in women to be smart? Women? Yes. Is there a need in women to be curious? That's something they have in common with the cats. No? Cats are very curious animals. And it's fantastic how curious they are. It's nothing they're missing nothing. They know everything in the house. They just come immediately when I come home and check, what have I brought? What is there new? So there is a need for curiosity. Who gave that need in us? God. Will this need ever be satisfied? We are going to be curious forever because we want to know more and more, and we will be happy to know, but we will also be happy to know more than we know as. So this is a natural need that God gave in our spirit to be curious, to explore things. Have you seen the little children, how explorative they are? Yes, they want to know everything. So the devil comes because Eve and Adam have a need. Yeah? He comes and said, if you want to be smart, you're curious, this fruit will make you wise. It will give you all knowledge. You will be like God. And so he formulated that in a way that, would you not like to be as smart as God is? Yeah? It didn't look bad, did it? To fulfill your need. The only thing was that The need can be fulfilled by eating of a fruit. Now here, something had to happen. Would you ever believe that you can be smart if you eat a fruit? Can fruits give you smartness? Can they satisfy that need for wisdom? Can they? No. I'm so thankful that God put that tree there and He said, do not eat, because it cannot satisfy your needs. Because a physical thing cannot satisfy a spiritual. But God always, through all the Bible, uses physical things to illustrate the spiritual, because we cannot see the spiritual if we have not a clear physical picture for it. And so He puts the tree there as a symbol for knowledge of good and evil. But can the tree communicate that? No, of course not. It's different with the tree of life, is it? Do we need to eat to live? Yes. Yes, but it's different. Life is dependent on what we eat. But wisdom is not dependent by what we eat, even though we might be tempted to think like that. So, the devil does not come with a physical attraction to Eve. He comes with a spiritual need. We must know that temptation comes because we have a spiritual need. But we want to satisfy that through the body, and we have to satisfy the needs through our body. So, he knows exactly. He must attract Eve to do something, to say yes or no. Yes?
Wasn't part of the attraction the fact that the snakes had never talked before, and this snake was talking, and the snake was beautiful?
Well, of course, there are many things. Thank you for the question. The first idea is, and I want to introduce this here, and let me 1 minute and then we get to that point. Why did Eve eat? Because she was hungry? Because she wanted to be smart? Why did she eat? Was it curiosity? Pardon? Well, that's just the hook. Why is she eating? Well, that's only the hook. Before she evaluates it as a gain or as a loss, what must happen? Measurement. And how is the measurement? What was Eve's cause why she ate? Yeah, that's after that. Before you think it's a gain, you have to have the measurement. So what measurement did Eve use? She used the snake's measurement. The snake says the opposite of the measurement of God. The snake says it is good to eat when God says it's evil to eat. He says, if you don't eat, you lose. And God says, if you do not eat, you gain. So she says something that is totally in opposition to what God said, did he? Now what's the only criteria why she ate? What was the only thing, and we will have to fix that tonight and in the other days, what's the only thing that leads us into sin? There is only one thing. Not the gain is by God. Oh, before the gain and the choice, you must have another action that you do according to the measurement. It's very good that you think. What do you do before you choose? On what do you evaluate? You're getting closer. That's after it. So it's not nice to see you thinking. We must go. The one thing why Eve ate was she trusted the snakes that she says the truth, and she made God a liar. Before you can eat, you must trust who is right. Yes? And here, how many choices do you have whom to trust? Only the snake or God? So before we do any action, we must trust the measurement, we must trust to the person that gives the evaluation, what is a gain or what is a loss. And that is the law. We will see a little bit later. So, Eve's only reason why she eats is she trusts the snake. Now, let me, and this is now coming. We have today evidence-based medicine. Yes? Evidence-based means you have a headache and I give you a pill and it works, your headache is gone. But if the pill doesn't work, then you take in another one. You have no evidence that that is working. Now, would you believe what you see with your eyes? If God says, if you eat from that tree, that day you eat, you'll die. And now you see a person, you see a creature that is eating that fruit, and how much death occurs? None. That's evidence-based, not law-based. That's a difference between law-based understanding of things and evidence-based understanding. The devil will fool us with evidences. They are not correct, but he will just fool us. He fooled Eve because she thought the devil is trustworthy, or the snake is trustworthy because, look, she eats and says, this is delicious. And women also have a nice appetite, do they? I see my wife. I mean, my appetite has also many bad, I'm tempted with appetite, but I would never taste half of what she tastes. Yeah? Because I say, that's not my business. I'm not curious. Doesn't look good for me. I don't taste. But she tastes. I said, why? How could you taste that? It's not attractive to me. So, there's a fruit, and it's tasty, and it does not make you sick. It makes the snake able to speak. That's evidence. That's an evidence-based thing. You look at it. Can it be that God is a liar? Understand? That's all the thoughts that go there through Eve. And she must finally decide whom she trusts. And in the moment she decided whom she trusts, she says, it is a gain to eat. And then she takes a decision and says, yes. And then she eats. The decisive step is trust. In whose measurement do you trust? Does it bring you gain or loss. That's the decisive thing. God said, if you eat, you die. If you don't eat, you live. And the snake says, if you eat, you're going to be smart, you're going to be like God. And if you don't eat, you remain stupid. Exactly that's what he said to Eve. And he knew how to take the humans. Because there is a strong thing in us. Do we ever want to lose? Eve, it's your chance. If you don't eat now. You see, all advertising works through the yes or through the no. The advertising works through the no. They say it's on sale. You miss if you don't buy today. Because you want to make a gain. And so they say, tomorrow, it's not the gain any more. And so you are somehow forced in time to make that decision now. But if you would know it's in 10 days the same, you would say, I sleep a night over it and look to it. So this is how advertising, you could never put something in sale if you don't limit it in time, because it won't work. Yeah? So that's why the snake said, come and you will be wise like God. But if you don't eat, you miss the point. You miss it. It's very, very cunningly. I mean, he knew how God created us. Yes? And he knew how to tempt. But could he make Eve to trust him? Could he do that? No. That was Eve's own action. Not, yes, it's a predecision, yeah? Whom you trust. It's an action that makes you then do or not do, decide or not decide. But before you decide, you need to trust according to the evaluation. Why did Adam eat from the fruit? He trusted Eve. Again, he loves Eve. He knows that she did something wrong. But now he has evidence-based things. Eve is as beautiful as ever. Her tongue seems a little bit more loose than before, because she speaks now very nicely and fast, wanting to make sure Adam doesn't miss the... Because now, exactly the same, now Eve is the agent of the devil. Yes? She knows how to bring to Adam and say, Adam, God must have somehow fooled us. He must have lied to us. Because look at me, I am now higher in stature. You know, Ellen White describes it that Eve thought she's now in a higher sphere. Yeah? She thought, oh, you know. And Adam says, could it be? Is this Eve? She eats the fruit in front of him. I think she brought many there and says, Adam, they taste good. Adam, you must taste this. Do you think that she had some women when they want to do something? Yeah? So I think that she was very pressing now, being under the devil's spirit. She was just using all that she could to make Adam eat. But if Adam would have believed God, to eat is a loss, would he ever have taken that fruit and eaten? He could not. But he started to doubt and say, I see Eve eating. It's evidence-based. I see the evidence. God must be a liar. Now there's another question I want to ask you. If you would be instead of Eve, when a creature comes to you and says the opposite what your Creator says to you, whom would you believe? Who would have more trust for you? Would it not be the Creator? No, would it not be the Creator? I tell you, is there any reason in Eve to trust the creature more than the Creator? There is no reason for it. That's why sin has no reason. There's no reason. There's no reason why Eve should trust a creature that speaks and eats the fruit and say God must say it wrong.
But I've heard before that because of Adam's love for Eve, even though he knew she had done wrong, he didn't want to see her die and not have anyone, and that's why he made that decision.
Yes, that's we can read it that Adam loved Eve. Well, that's normal. If you are God's creation, you love it. But what we understand mostly out of what we read there is Adam sacrificed his life for Eve. Is that the meaning of that sentence? Did he go into loss consciously like Romeo with Julia? Understand? He went against God the same way because he trusted whom more? Eve more, and that's love, trust, yes. He trusted Eve more and he made God a liar. If not, Adam would have made a heroic action. He would have acted out of love, sacrificing his life. You see why? Love without the law can never be understood. Yeah? And if you read all the quotes from Ellen White, you will find that Adam has doubted God's word. And that's why he ate. Yes, he did it out of love for Eve. But before you do something, you must trust. And he needed to take God apart to believe Eve. He had no choice. That was there in his heart that took place. Now, let me say, if you would Adam be, would you trust your Creator more or your rib? It would be obvious that you trust the Creator more. How could he trust his rib more than the creature, the Creator? Does it make any sense? No. That's why the falling into sin is senseless. A colleague of me said it's stupidity. But they were not stupid. It's the mystery of sin. It's the mystery of sin. Why Lucifer mistrusted God is unexplainable, especially then when he knew he was wrong, and he still did it. But when Adam and Eve fell into the same mistrust and disbelief in God and believed the lie as a truth, it is as well unreasonable and ununderstandable, unexplainable. It's not unexplainable. It's not explainable. That's why I believe in that what Jesus says from the 100 worlds that he created, with that parable that there is 100 sheep and one is getting lost and he goes to take it. So God proves with 100 to 1 that there is no reason ever to trust a creature instead of the Creator. There is no reason. So that we are today in sin is unexplainable with reason. The Lord might know, but I don't know. That's why it's called the mystery of sin. Now we come onto this world with a distorted measurement. We come on this world, not with that what God once instated in us, but with that what the devil put into Eve. And I want to do it in another way to paint that. If this is Adam before the fall, Adam before the fall knew that I am a creature. And as a creature, whom do you trust? You trust the Creator. And whose will do you do? Yes? Because trust, you will see trust, faith, yeah, is the first thing in every action of every human and every animal. Because before you act, you must believe that is a gain or a loss. So I am a creature. This was his state. But now sin comes, which is mistrust. And what is a transformation for Adam and Eve? Here we have the transformation. Now Adam and Eve, after Adam ate, have in front of their eyes some glasses. And the glasses tell them not I am a creature, but they tell them exactly that what Eve promised, what the snake promised to Eve. It says, I am God. We will talk about that more, but just to see it. So after sin, we all come on this earth with a distorted view of gain and loss. And salvation is what? The salvation is to take off the glasses that the devil put on our spirit in front of our heart. Yes, there, or yeah, it's in the heart. So we believe something about us that is wrong, and so we can never judge correctly anymore. After Adam ate, they lost their garment, and they lost their insight in their heart, and they became blind to themselves. Who takes the responsibility that you ate? Who does Adam blame? Eve. Blaming others. Is it because you're smart or blind? Seeing or blind? Blaming others is always because you're blind. That's a consequence of being blind. You blame others for what you do. So, we are all born into this blindness. And the salvation process is nothing else. Salvation means is what? To bring us back, having no eyes, no glasses anymore. That's the salvation process. That's grace. We get from a self-deception to a no self-deception. Because we trust all today into the false source. That's why we are going to be sick in the moment when something hits us that is a loss. We will see that a little bit later as well. So, having made this excursion, we understand we need a measure. Who says what is gain and the loss? Who says it? Who must say it? God. Yes? And he said it through the law. Because the law shows you what is a gain and what is a loss, and how you get to gain and how you get to loss. So without the law, how much can our spirit decide between what is a gain and the loss? Nothing. Okay? So it's like a driver's license. God put along a lot of streets through this universe. And he said, my child, walk on these streets. Drive your car on these streets. Do you need a law to drive that car on the street? Yes. And you need to know the law so that you don't get up into the ditch or off-road. So, could it be possible, just in a small city like Phoenix, to drive if there would be no rules how to drive? Would it be? Everyone would drive on his side. And how far would we get? Yeah? Said, oh, this is my side. And the one would be right on the right side, the other would on the left, the other would come from, there would be a chaos. No possibility to drive any car in a city. But there is a law, and every driver's license must surrender to that law. And so he drives his car correctly. So God could not create a human being. And any human or spirit-based being that should have not a measure that he put there in it so that it can orient how to say yes and how to say no. This is structure, this is construction. And God made it very clear through his law how we should measure. And breaking the law, Adam and Eve broke the law or not? Yes, they became blind, and now they have a different kind of measurement whenever something comes through. So the measurement is the most important thing. The measurement determines the decision. Because with the measurement, everything starts. So the event comes, you see it, you hear it, you smell it, you taste it, you feel it. And now comes the measurement, and then comes the evaluation. And if the measurement is correct, all your evaluation is correct, and all your decisions are correct and good. And you are a totally perfect being. If you would just keep that measurement that is at the beginning of every action, we need to orient after it or not. If we are aware of it or not, because it's subconscious, we're not aware of it, but we can prove it on the disease, because the decision is wrong and makes the body sick. It makes the piano play wrong. So, the measure determines the decision. That's the first thing. So the information comes from outside. You smell, you hear, you whatever. You know you have to evaluate that. But before you evaluate it, you must have a measure. And that measure is the law of God. That's the law of life. We will see how it will work tomorrow night. And that law of life leads you that you know what is a gain and what is a loss. And so you can say yes and no freely. You are not a bonded spirit. The spirit is free because he orients itself after the law of God. Now, how many Bible verses do you have about the law that makes free? You see, when I ask teenagers, what do you associate with law? Something positive or negative? What do they say? Negative. They have never understood when you drive your car on the street, does that make you free or does that put you into a prison? Makes you free. That's why I have to read this, because there is said in the Bible, when we are under the Spirit of God, we are free. And we go into my favorite book, or one of my favorite books, that is James. And there is, I think in the 2nd chapter, it says here about the law. Do not they blaspheme that worthy name by which they are called? If ye fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. But if ye have respect to persons, you commit sin, and are convinced of the law as transgressors. For whosoever shall keep the whole law, and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. For he that said, do not commit adultery, said also, do not kill. Now if thou commit no adultery, yet thou killed, thou art become a transgressor of the law. So speak ye, and so do, as they that shall be judged by the law of liberty. For he shall have judgment without mercy, that he is wrong against. I think it comes once more. The law of liberty. You see, would we obey the law, or would we know the law, how it should be obeyed, we would be free agents. Yes? No matter what event would come from outside, we would not destroy ourselves. And this is the beautiful story of Job that proves that. You know, I did these PowerPoint presentations for the study of Job, and I have them online on YouTube. You can go and type in my name or the Bible School and Job, and you will find all the lectures about Job. And Job is a perfect example of a person that has what in his heart? The law. The law. Because he has a right measurement. Let's look how it is when we have the false measurement, the wrong one. How do we getting confused? We have an event, it comes in, and then we might put it as a loss and think, don't know that it's a gain. We are confused, you see. We put the loss in the gain and the gain in the loss. So today, do you know what is right and wrong? Do you know what is a gain and the loss without the law? Can you know that? No, because it looks good, everything. So, with the wrong measurement, you get into that point where you consider your loss personable and unavoidable. Do you think that someone can make you loss? Let's do that experiment here. Can someone come and make yourself loss? Can or not? I tell you a story. She's my patient. She's 59 and might be getting 60, but I have her from this year. And she has been abused as a child from her father, from the age of 8, I think, to the age of 17, as a sexual abuse. And her father is, in the same time, a preacher, an evangelist, who never got to be stopped in all his work until his old ages. And she, the lady, has diseases from her teenage years. And one of the bad diseases is 6 years ago. Started with fibromyalgia, with pain in her body. And of course, how does she think about her father? Or how does she think about the abuse? As personal or non-personal? Personal. So who is in debt to her for the damage that was done? Who is in debt? Her father. Can the father ever pay the damage? No. And if the damage cannot be repaired, you are in what kind of loss? An uncoverable or undoable loss. Then you are in such a corner, you must die. You see, my time is gone, but if you give me a few minutes. When I discovered the two things that the heart functions only by gain and loss, when I discovered those two criteria, it was so strange to me that everything comes back to gain and loss, that I said, Lord, if this is true, if this is what you have built us, it must be written where? It must be written in the Word of God. Have you ever written in the Word of God that we have only 2 criteria to decide? It's just gain and loss. Now, but choose you this day, but what is it? So, when I first discovered it, I went to God, and God opened my eyes in the Matthew 6. Which speech is Matthew 5, 6, and 7? It is Christ's speech. And here he describes the function of the heart of man. You see, if we know what the heart is, you will look to Jesus' teaching and you will find that his main teaching is about the heart. But no one understood him because they didn't know about what he was speaking. So, lay not up for yourself treasures upon earth where moth and rust does corrupt and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust does corrupt and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So what does the heart need? A treasure. What is a treasure? A gain or a loss? Gain. Now tell me the only one reason why you should have not a treasure on earth and why you should have many treasures in heaven. One reason. So are you with me? What's the one reason is here? It's the corruption, it's the loss. I find my patients have lost their treasure. They have lost their treasure. They had become damaged in their treasure. Would you think that when you have been abused sexually, do you lose a treasure or not? They say you lose your virginity, you lose your indemnity, you lose your whatever. Yes? But why? Why is this air conditioning not working? Is it on purpose? Just to make us sweat? I don't know. Okay, thank you. It's so necessary for us to understand where our treasure is, there must the heart be as well. And this is what we must understand. And the only reason why we should have no treasure on earth is because we can lose it. You see, the heavenly treasure is not able to be lost. And you see, when the rich young rulers came to Christ, he says, sell everything that you might have a heavenly treasure, not an earthly one, and you then will live how long? Forever. You see, if your treasure is never going to be lost, your life is an everlasting life. You understand that? If the issues of life come from the heart, then your treasure is decisive for your life. Without a treasure, you cannot live. You must have one, and you must have one that can never be stolen from you. And that's why Jesus says, lay up for yourself treasures. Do you want to be rich? Do you think to be rich is a wrong thing? No, I want to be rich. I confess it. God made me to be rich. But I don't want to have riches in a bank. Yes? But you see, if people on earth are going through all temptations, and even the temptation when they are rich, they are still true to God. They don't bind their heart to their riches, like Job was. Then they are really perfect. Yes, because Jesus says, how many rich people will be in heaven? Yeah, very hard, because you bind your heart to those riches. You cannot give them up. Because we cannot give up riches, you know that? That's why I put everything in the bank of heaven. And then I want to get my paycheck. You see, that's not salvation by works, because that's not possible. But I want to be rich. I don't do this work for nothing. I don't do it for nothing, because then I would have no goal. I want to be rich, but not in earthly things. I want to have in heaven many people that are saved through what God gave me to do. So when I go through Jerusalem, I see, this is the house that rejoices, and that's the house that rejoices, and that's the one. And as many, the more I have, the more. How long will that treasure last? Will I ever get, after 1 billion of years, and I see that person saved through the grace that God gave me to help him, will I not rejoice when I see it? Will they not say, oh, what a blessing? And I will have worked for 20 years here on earth, so to say, and you have an everlasting gain. Would that not be worth working for? Leaving all these treasures behind? Because Jesus says this to whom? To the disciples. This is the crowning speech. He just benedicted them, yes? He just blessed them as his disciples. He chose them as his disciples. The whole night he had prayed, and now he prayed over them, and now he gives them the law, the Marschrut. You know, the Sermon on the Mount is just an expression of the 10 Commandments. Yes, it's fantastic, and it's a description of the heart. The Sermon on the Mount is the most richest sermon you ever can study. You will never finish it. But it is there. It says, you are my disciples. You lay up treasure in heaven. You don't need treasure on earth, but you will have rich treasures in heaven. And all 3 took it. All 11 took it, and 1 didn't. He chose the earthly treasure. So let's make it plain. There is not much more in decision taking than gain and loss. God made us to be rich. He made that Adam should enjoy how many trees? All of them except one. Now if you have thousands of trees and one you don't need to because it's poisoned, would you get embarrassed? If you have persimmons and you have peaches and you have, and then you have this funny looking thing, would you be tempted to that? Because I don't think so. If that bears death with you, the other 99 planets prove that they were not tempted to eat from it. They didn't go astray, the other sheep. There was only one sheep that got astray, and that is Adam and Eve, our world. So, for where the treasure is, there will your heart be also. So let us make plain, and we finish tonight with this short thing. If the measurement is wrong, you lose your gain, and your loss is personal. This lady, we'll talk more about her tomorrow night. This lady is sick because what can she not do? Love her father. Does the law excuse her? She wrote to me and said, is it not possible to view my father just as a person that put me into this world, but it's not my real father? I do not need to respect him. Can we understand her? Yeah, I think we can understand her. But it's still a deception in the way she looks to things. She believes her body is whose? Hers. Is it true? To whom then, when others do us bad things, do they do it? Because we are belonging to God. Now this is where Job was a free person. You see, there is no personal loss, but we consider it a personal loss if someone steals us something or all this. And so then our spirit gets ensnared and our decisions are wrong and our body is sick. That's the way it works. Because you are in a loss situation and you will never be able to say yes to loss. Jesus never considered when he was beaten that it was him who is beaten. He said, I am representing my Father. If you beat me up, you beat up my Father. And he knew it, he believed it, because he was the Father's possession, the Father's son. So, Job's heart, just to finish with Job's heart, he has a heart like we. He got an information in 12 hours. Yes, 12 hours? Not one finished, the next came. Yes? And he got those informations. All your camels are dead, all your sheep, and the servant, all their families were killed. I am the only one that escaped. And then they go on until the children, they made the feast, and there came a wind, and the wind blew at the house, and the children what happened? They died. So one event after the other, and now you have to put the right measurement on all that information. You need to put the right trust in it. And so in Job's heart is the law, and he knows by law that he is a creature, and everything that comes to him comes from God. He knows what is a loss and a gain, but he knows for sure by the law that he never can have a personal loss. I came naked and I go naked. Every physical thing that can be taken away from us is coming from God. It is not ours. So being in no personal loss, his decisions were yes and no. He had clear decisions, and those clear decisions was there. Then Job arose, tore his robe and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. That's something that no one that has still a wrong eyesight, we will see that tomorrow, that no one that has a glass before his evaluation system can do, as long as we have the lie in our heart that we believe that we will never react like Job. But in the moment that we have the clear eyesight through the law and we trust the right measurement, then all our decisions, our evaluation is correct. We won't evaluate nothing as personal because we are just a creature. It's nothing personal. Yes? We all do it for He who has created us. And so I thank you for listening. I don't ask for questions tonight because it's late, but write your questions, and tomorrow night we can spend longer because it's Friday night, so tomorrow we have more time.